My Gen X memories of the nuclear arms race includes Dr. Seuss's 1984 book, The Butter Battle Book. And it's a Dr. Seuss book. It's lots of rhymes, but it really has a serious story behind some of its ridiculousness. You have two peoples, the Zooks and the Ukes. One wears red, orange rather, and the other one wears blue. Their town or their area is surrounded or separated by a curved wall. And what is the big difference that they fight over is that the Zooks eat their bread with the butter side down, and the Ukes eat with the butter side up. And this bothers them to the point that they start having an arms race. And it ends where they each have this little pebble, or it looks like a pebble, but it's mutually assured destruction. If each side drops it, or if any of them drops it, then their world disappears. And so it was Dr. Seuss's attempt to allow us Gen Xers to contemplate and sort of think about what the nuclear arms race was really about. Those of us who are older here had a little bit more serious duck and cover, the Cuban Missile Crisis, and really anyone who is around today of any generation, we are still dealing with the nuclear arms race. Yes, the Cold War has mostly calmed down, but we are afraid that all the Russian arms are in the hands of Vladimir Putin now. And what if he literally gets a screw loose and presses the button? Or Belarus around him actually now has some weapons. And we all know about North Korea and Iran. And so we are still in a nuclear arms race in terms of mutually assured destruction. Why do I bring it up? Because tomorrow, August 6th, is the 78th anniversary on when Paul Tibbets took the Enola Gay to Hiroshima and dropped the first A-bomb. And then Wednesday, August 9th, is the anniversary of the second bomb in Nagasaki. And some of us might have already had the opportunity to go see the film Oppenheimer, which describes, and really it's a biopic, so dramatizes the experience of Robert Oppenheimer as he led the Manhattan Project that allowed for the dropping of that bomb. Those of you know that I love history, and so having seen the film, I went and did more studying. And I learned not just what's in the film, which we know is history, and I encourage you, if you're able to, don't work for the studios, to go see the film. It's long, prepare yourself, but it just really dramatizes the whole experience, especially the Trinity test that was in the New Mexico wilderness. But what I learned was, for the first time for me, was the Manhattan Project first began as an arms race, or really a race with Germany to create the nuclear energy, to create a nuclear weapon. But then when the war was over with Germany, but even before that, there was contemplation, should this be used on Japan? Many of us know people who were in the Pacific Theater in the 1940s. And especially between VE Day and VJ Day, there was this angst. How can we end this war? And it seemed really for most intelligence that Japan was not going to surrender unless they lost their home islands, is what it's called. And in order for the Allies to do that, they were going to need over 100,000 troops, probably most of them casualties, in order to invade the islands of Japan. So the question was there any way to get Japan to surrender? And the movie actually sort of starts to get to that question, even though we know what happened. And why does it get to that question? Because already before the dropping of the two bombs, the arms race starts. And that's what I learned. I learned that in the 1944 already, they said we can't just drop one bomb. Japan might call our bluff and said, oh, you got lucky. There's no way to mass produce nuclear weapons. We have to drop at least two bombs to show them that this is part of the United States' arsenal. This is 1944. So already people are starting to contemplate what a nuclear world is about. It is about not just having one bomb. It's about having the power to mass produce them, to create the arms race that we eventually had. Because everyone thought, oh, we're only going to be the only ones that are going to have the technology. No one else is. But we know how quickly that technology spread around. And so the film also talks about Oppenheimer's thinking in his mind. I don't know how imagined it is or not, but we know that he spoke out against proliferation after the bombs were dropped, after the war, because he did not want proliferation. He saw the problems therein. The Torah teaches us, especially in Deuteronomy, that God presents before us life and death, blessing and curse, and we are supposed to choose life. We have a collective choice between possible life, death and annihilation, and life and blessing. The movie ends, as we know, the ending is there. I don't have to ruin it. That Oppenheimer loses his security clearance because he has dared to challenge the power. He has dared to challenge this arms race. And you might know that the book that it's based on is called The American Prometheus. The myth of Prometheus is how, in the Greek myth, how humans got fire. They stole it from the Greek gods. And now it is a blessing and a curse that we humans have fire. It gives us warmth, gives us light, it allows us to cook our food. But we also know the dangers therein of having fire. Deuteronomy is about the choices that we make, collective as well as individuals. And nuclear weapons challenge us, really. And that's what Oppenheimer was actually getting at, and the film was getting at. Challenge us to find global unity. Dr. Seuss got it right back in the book. Because what is the difference between the Zooks and the Ukes? Just Nourishkeit. What side their butter is buttered on? Even though there are so many differences and there are real animosities between the peoples of this world, we only share one earth. And if one of us were to destroy it, we destroy it for all of us. And so we have to find a way to at least unite around that and agree to never drop a bomb. And ideally, okay, I'm not going to get into the details of that, even if we could reduce the number of nuclear arms that are in our collective arsenal. Maybe we wouldn't have to sleep with one eye open, wondering the what if. And so this week, 78 years after the dropping of the bombs, it might have had to happen because Japan wasn't going to surrender. Let us, though, remember the lives lost on all sides. Remember the fallouts from actually the Trinity test itself. There was talk now about that there's still a huge cancer risk in the New Mexico desert where people live. They're people of generations. And so we also unleashed a lot of radiation and health problems by this test. And I know that it's much easier said than done to find the peace. But let us pursue Isaiah's dream of turning our swords into plowshares and maybe taking that nuclear fuel and using it for beneficial use and not just putting it and nuclear weapons. And let us say, Amen.